I'm going to do the translation on the piece that I just finished in Ojibwe. It's Gikino Amawind, that is teaching. Teaching a child is actually what we're talking about. And Naginind Abinoji, that's correcting the behavior of a child or disciplining. And I was thinking about this the other day, about all of these teachings of respect. This is so critically important. It's like the core or the foundation of our community as Anishinaabe. A lot of this defines who we are as a people. And I've noticed lately with a lot of changes that we have been going through as a people, a lot of our people are no longer teaching our children these teachings about respect. And it's very apparent to me, I can tell when I travel in and around our community. For example, some of our ceremonies, I do funerals, and it's really strange to see our people, young kids, children running around at a funeral and having no respect for the deceased, the spirit of that individual that's about to be buried. The same happens with our ceremonial dances. When those drums are open, everybody's supposed to sit around there quietly. Now today we have our kids running around. I know when we have our dance, I'm constantly on guard, chasing kids around, trying to get them to sit down. And that's not something that happened to us as a people. The other thing I notice too is when I have a family come over, maybe bringing over their tobacco to visit with me, and they bring their children along. And there are some of them, as soon as the children come in, they'll sit on the couch and they'll sit there the whole time. But there are others that come in, they just are running around, touching everything in the house. And of course, I'm trying to talk with the parents, and the parents don't even notice that. They're visiting with me, but here I am on guard, watching what those children do. It's not the way I was raised. Those old people had a whole set of teachings that they reminded me about, and I sat down one day and I wrote those teachings about respect, and I got up to, I believe, the number 41 or 42 of them. And that is the ones I covered as I was talking in Ojibwe. And those old people told me that you need to listen to what we are teaching you. You have to live by these rules and follow these teachings. They always told me, if you don't follow those teachings, what's going to happen to you is that you'll eventually not have respect for your fellow man, the spirit in our fellow man, or things out there in the wild. And as I get older and I look at our communities and I see what's happening, there's a lot of violence going on between Anishinaabe versus Anishinaabe, to the point that where our people are kill and murder a fellow Anishinaabe. And that's what I see happening as a result of our people getting away from these teachings. I want to stress to people, especially Anishinaabe, These teachings are there for a reason. They have been passed down for generation. And they're reason why they have survived all this time. They're critically important to us as a community. And our parents, our Anishinaabe parents, have to bring these teachings back into their homes and teach your children. And don't look down on these teachings and say, they're not important to us. They are important to us as a people. So I want to stress that. But I want to go through and read some of these because there's so many, and translate some of them that I have covered. Number one, I talked about do not be mean to your dog. The dog also has a spirit. Everything has a spirit that is here on earth. And that is so true. We just did a funeral the other day. And I remember, the people tend to bring in flowers for our funerals. And I was told way back, one of the old ladies got really upset when someone had brought some cut flowers to this particular funeral at that time. She got really upset and she said, why did they go and kill these flowers for this? Meaning, she recognized that there's a spirit in everything. And so today, especially in Mille Lacs, I always remind people to bring plants rather than cut flowers. So which is what they do. And that was what that old lady was talking about. But there's a spirit in everything. The other day, I was thinking about the peace and the quiet and how we get in touch with ourselves when we're out in the forest, out amongst the trees, out in the wild. That's one of the places that we are taught as a people to go to and to release a lot of our emotions, whatever is bothering us, to let it all fly out. Let that anger fly out, or maybe that grief. Cry as hard as you can. There are many Dug out there that will hear you and they will take care of you. And that's true. There's a spirit in those trees. There's even a name for that spirit. It's called Mitigwabi Unene. All of the animals, they all have a spirit just like our dog does. All the birds. I always love those birds, calling them Shime Duk Shimeag. That was Winnebushu, one of our Manidug that lived with us, the people. He always addressed the birds as Shime Duk, and I still do that. So there's a lot of spirits out there that can help you in your lives. And then I talked also about a lot of our Anishinaabe names are based in and around these animals and those things in the wild. And these are Manidug that showed up in the dreams of our people who give out names, and it's from there that they were able to give their names. Number 2, do not interrupt adults when they are visiting. Sit here quietly while they are here visiting us. Maybe you can go outside and play. Certainly one those old people kept reminding me about, and that is for sure to have respect for those people that are older, denying that come into the house and And don't even think about coming in and interrupting their conversations. And that is, when you're raised and brought up that way, that's something that you always carry and practice in your life. This third one here is, I was reminded to put tobacco in the water before I go swimming, to remember that there's a Manitou out there in that lake or that river. And every body of water has a Manitou, a spirit within it. And we have to respect that Manitou. I wish this larger society would acknowledge this and know this. If you take a look at how a lot of our non-Indian people are trashing our lakes. You know, some of the things that people do on the lakes, it's really scary for me, something that I would not consider doing. For example, just riding as fast as they can with their boats and their motor boats, or skiing, water skiing on the lakes. I just can't imagine myself doing that. To me, that is totally disrespectful to that Manitou, that spirit within that lake. So, we were told not to raise heck or do foolish things while we're out there. And also, one of the teachings, at least in my time, I can remember those old people saying, so take a look and you'll notice that a lot of our people have not drowned, have not died in the waters. It's because of that teaching of them to put their tobacco and be respectful to that spirit within that lake. And that has been pretty much true ever so often nowadays, though you hear of a drowning. So anytime we go out there for fishing, wild rice harvest, netting, I was always told to be sure to put my tobacco. Recently over in Mille Lacs, I had a couple young guys tell me that they were out there netting with their boat, and that is a powerful lake. I wouldn't mess around with that lake. It's powerful. But they were out there netting and their boat capsized. And they talked about how they barely made it swim into shore. They were out there so far. And I asked them, did you put your tobacco? And they said, no. I said, well, no wonder. Number 4, the other one that we're always taught about is do not bother the nests of birds. Do not destroy their eggs. Do not hurt those little birds in those nests. You want to remember that someday you're going to be a parent. You're going to have your own children. And what you do now can have repercussions. All of this can come back to you when you're a parent later on up the road. Number 5, I think I talked about this one earlier. Do not run around the ceremonial drums when they're open. We're always told if you should fall, you'll really hurt yourself. I was always told when I come into a dance, there's only 2 reasons you can get up. One of them is to get up to dance or to go to the bathroom. Otherwise, sit there quietly. And when those drums are open, they say those Manitou, those spirits, are right above that drum there. So as a child, they told me that those Manitou will like seeing you sitting there quietly and listening. And also by sitting there and watching what's going on, you're able to remember some of this and be able to help carry on our dances. So number 6, listen to your elders when they give you advice or tell you something. Do not even think about talking back to them, even if you already know what you're being told. Don't even think of saying anything. I have mentioned this to people, my history of growing up in the Anishinaabe community. Sometimes I'd run into some of our elders who were really difficult to work with, had a lot of anger, and, did a lot of things to me that I considered to be really unfair and mean. But not once did I even think about talking back to them or confronting them. That's because this teaching was such an important part of my life, of my upbringing, to not even consider talking back to them. So I think it's a necessary one. It has to be there. And number 7, be respectful to the thunder beings and the storms. We offer our tobacco to those thunder beings, asking them to go over in a good way and to remember that there are Anishinaabe people living here. One of the things I was told too, once a storm goes by, don't even mention it and say, well, the thunder beings have gone by, it's no longer storming, they're going west or east or whatever. Don't consider saying that, because they could very well come back, and so that's one of the things that they remind me of, and I want to take a break here. Yeah, one of the teachings is about, in regard to humility, being humble, and to not always brag about yourself. Remember, it's the Manidu, those spirits that are all knowledgeable. It's not us as human beings. And those Manidu could get tired of you if you're always being boisterous, bragging about yourself constantly. So that was one of the teachings that we have had as a people, to practice humility. But sometimes that's where I have had a problem with myself. Sometimes I will not give myself or acknowledge myself for all that I have been given or know how to do on a cultural level, is because of that teaching. So I'm always working at finding balance here, to make sure I give myself credit too for a lot of what I've done. Number 9, have compassion for our old people, for our elders. And I remember this one. I appreciate this teaching now that I'm getting older. Do not laugh at our elders if they should accidentally pass gas or urinate on themselves. Remember that someday you will also be old too. It's the one I remember quite a bit now that I'm older, and sometimes I'll remind others, don't laugh at me. If I should accidentally pass gas. Number 10, do not be a bully. not hurt those who you play with. Remember that bullies do not live long. The old man that raised me and told me this, he said, don't don't go around being a bully and pick on other people. He said, take a look in our community, and he pointed out a couple young men. He said, look at those two. They're not going to live long. I can tell you this right now, because of their bullying behaviors. And sure enough, both of those young guys died of violent death. So it's a reminder. And the other thing is that's terrible about bullying is that when you do that to a person, you're giving them a negative message. You're telling them that they're inferior, they're not good enough, they don't live up to par. And usually you're condemning. And some of these people will grow up and believe in that. It's only through therapy and counseling that they're able to dump a lot of this. So you do a lot of damage to people by being really critical and by hurting them, by picking on them, by teasing them. So, number 11, have compassion for those who were born differently, those who are handicapped, or those who have mental issues. Remember, those Manidug intended them to live that way. They were put on this earth to teach us something. And that's one of those teachings I was brought up with. Especially if those are handicapped, maybe they have difficulty walking, they're born that way. And you'll see some people come by and tease them. That's terrible to do that to anybody. Our gay and lesbian, transgender community, it's another example, is that these are a special group of people. They were put on this earth for a reason. They have something to teach us. They have an insight that a lot of us don't. And for the longest time, a lot of our people had to live in the closet and hide a lot of that stuff. And can you imagine how damaging that can be? Not totally embracing who you are and your spirit. That spirit is gay or lesbian. And you need to embrace that and find out the reason. You were put on this earth that way, or something that you're to work on. What really upsets me is our Anishinaabe people when they can discriminate, say ugly things about people who are different. For example, our Black community, our Anishinaabe people being derogatory about them, about our gay and lesbian community. If we take a look at what has happened to us as Anishinaabe, we have been victimized by that discrimination. We have been put down because we're different. Our skin color was different. Our ceremonies were different. Our language was different. And that's what set us back and really did a lot of damage in our community. So we as Anishinaabe, we have gone through that. Why would we want to do that to another group of people, a set of people? It just blows my mind when I hear Anishinaabe people do that. We need to welcome those people who may be different. Number 12. If you harm your fellow Anishinaabe, it's actually those Manidug that watch over them that you are doing harm to. Our teaching as Anishinaabe people is that we would not exist on this earth. We have manidug that watch over us, and we would not be here if they weren't there. And when we go along and harming our fellow man, those are the ones that we are actually harming. I use that one when we do the wedding ceremony as a namesake ceremony. Every one of the individuals that are selected as weddings have manidug that watch over them, and when I talk to for their tobacco and the food put before them, I say that they would, if they were able to talk in Ojibwe, they would offer that food and that tobacco to those manidug that watch over them, and they would in turn ask those manidug to watch over their new we'en, that little baby. Number 13, do not play outside during the night. If you were to do that, it's hard telling who you'd be playing with that night. This is always a teaching that's been with us as a people. We did a story recently about this. I'm hoping we're going to get it out in the paper about these two young boys out playing, disregarding what their grandmother had taught them. In a way, it turns out that they find out they have other playmates while they're out there. And one of them says, do you notice that one of them is humpback that we're playing? And he said, yes. And the other young man says, yes, I also noticed that one of them didn't have a face. That probably would be a true story. Some truth to that, and we wanted to publish that, so our young ones realize, just can't. You can't disregard a lot of these teachings. They are there. A lot of this stuff can happen. The other one, number 14, do not be stingy. If you have something such as candy, share it with your friends. And remember, as you give things away, someday will come back to you so that you are not without. That's the same concept as helping people, sharing what you got. For those that are less fortunate and are without, you'll find out that in time, a lot of this will come back to you. It's what goes around comes around. If you're good to people, in time, other people will return the favor to you. If it's a financial thing, one of the things that we do funerals in our community. We come in and complete the funeral, and a lot of our families do not have the money, the finances to give us gas money or support. And that doesn't bother me because I always know that in time all of this comes back to me and my helpers. That you do good, you'll be on the receiving end of what is good. Do not whistle at night. Somebody might answer your whistle and scare you. Number 16. Value the food you're being fed and treat it respectfully, especially those foods we have been given to eat. Do not waste. Those old people were really got on my case whenever I would be wasteful. I can remember times going to the restaurant, going out to eat, and they loved to go out to eat. And I always can remember we're being served, and a lot of times maybe you'll have crackers that are wrapped up in plastic, along with maybe you're having soup. And the old man that raised me would get really upset if I wouldn't eat those crackers. He'd say, you're being fed that, don't waste that. But that's the way they were. I remember one time at the old man also, he was not an alcoholic, but he would have a beer occasionally. So when I was older, we went out to a bar, and I knew how he liked sweet stuff. So at that time I was drinking, I had ordered my beer, and I decided to order him a sweet drink. I don't know if it was a whiskey sour or whiskey Coke. They brought it over to him. It was all on ice. And he sat there drinking, and I sat there drinking my beer. And after I'd finished my beer, and I sat there for a while, and he didn't make any moves to leave, and I saw that he already, drank up the liquid contents of his drink. Finally, I asked him, Dad, why aren't we leaving? Why don't we leave? And that old man said, I'm waiting for my ice to melt. He wasn't about ready to waste the ice. He just is kind of like, you're given that, you need to not waste it. When it comes to the foods that we have been given, the Manidug, the spirits, gave us the animals to eat, like the deer and the rabbits, and the wild rice, the fish, and all of that grows in the wild. And that is the food that, above all, we shouldn't waste. It's what those spirits, those Manitou, gave us as a people. So we need to treat it respectfully and don't waste it, since it's what we were given. 17, do not laugh at those who eat a lot, or those who love to eat, and those who have big appetites. That old lady that raised me, she always reminded me of that. She said, don't make fun of them if they're Nibatis, they love to eat a lot. She said you would feel terrible if they weren't able to eat. So that was one of her teachings. They also remind us to forgive those who do us wrong and those who hurt us. Irregardless of whatever that person may do to us, we still have to have compassion for them. That's what we're taught as Anishinaabe. Even if a person was to kill one of our close relatives, we still have to forgive them and have compassion for them. And that's a teaching that I've shared in some of our funerals when the deceased was victimized and killed by somebody. I'd always remind the families that you need to forgive those people. One of the things that is worse for us as a people is to be consumed by that anger. Anger directed toward people that have did harm to our relatives. What that anger does, it really does a number on us. We'll never be at peace if we're not able to vent or get rid of that anger. It also can affect our physical health. There's a connection between the mind, the body, and the spirit. You have that anger there, it's going to affect those other areas of your life also. So, one of the teachings that I always share with people when they're real angry, I tell them to go out in the woods and holler your head off, get rid of that anger, and vent. Talk to somebody to get rid of that anger, because it's going to destroy you. And after you're able to do that, put your tobacco down for that person or those people that you feel have done you wrong. Because you're not going to be happy in your life if you carry all of that with you. So that's one of the teachings that we have. I think about our young men, a lot of them who are in the prisons today are Anishinaabe young men. This is probably an example of some of the anger that's out there. You know, a lot of our young men have rage and anger about living in this society. You know, that not able to secure a good education because they just never felt comfortable in the educational system, and being put down, and really never being self-fulfilled, not finding something that pleases them, you know, a good job, or, you know, each one of us have been put on this earth for a reason or something we're to do while we're here. And a lot of them don't. And so as a result, they carry a lot of rage and a lot of anger. And then you mix that with alcohol or drugs, and they're out and about, and somebody makes a move, does something wrong with them, and all of that anger comes out, and usually they end up killing that person. And that's why a lot of our young men are in prison today, because of that anger. So it's critical and important, and we get rid of that. This one here, they always reminded me about this teaching. When you're being disciplined or not, we are not doing wrong to you. We are being good to you and giving you what will help you in your future. And that's so true. Too many times, a lot of our parents are too lax with their children. Really upsets me when I'm around particularly these homes where kids are running wild. And then I realize, you know, how I was brought up. It's just very hard for me to adjust to that. Okay, as I continue on talking about these teachings, I just want to stress again the importance of these teachings, which I do in this number 20 here, is that those teachings have to be brought back into our community. Otherwise, we're going to have a lot of crazy behaviors, violence, and everything coming back. You know, when a child is young and you raise them, teaching them all these concepts about respect, how to respect this and that, and to remind them, they grow up that way, and as they get older, it becomes a part of their life, it's the way they carry themselves. If you don't teach them what they will do, eventually they will not respect anything here on this earth, and even their fellow man. Eventually end up killing somebody. It's just that terribly important. Number 21. If you run into anybody that's having a difficult time, maybe they're without, You need to have compassion, help them out. If we are good to our fellow man and give what we can, all of that is going to come back to us in time. But you also not go overboard either. Also, there's some respect for yourself. You need to give what you can to help others. To always have balance there. Number 22, do not waste your life by using alcohol or drugs. Our teaching is that every one of us have been put on this earth for a reason. There is something we are to do while we are here on this earth. It's our purpose in life, and that is what we have to pursue, go after while we're here on earth. And I always imagine with our young people, if they're taught this, and they realize there's something that they are to do while they're on this earth, and they do it, it's going to give them a focus in their lives, pursuing all of that. Right now, a lot of our young people, because they have moved away from our teachings as a people, I see them sitting up there like they're in limbo. They are not connecting with our Anishinaabe community, our traditional community, and also not connecting with the white world. So basically what they're doing is they're just hanging up there in limbo. And with these teachings coming back, and if they're practicing them, they will always feel like they're a part of the community. And also, when I do funerals, I talk about, what happens to us as a people. Our physical body gives up in some form or fashion, and it is our spirit that travels on. There is another existence for us beyond this world. And when I talk about that, our purpose, our reason for existing, I always remind those relatives, you have lost this relative. They have gone on to that land over there in the west where people go. You will see them in time, when it is time for you to make that journey. Then I tell them, in the meantime, you have things to do. You need to find out what it is those spirits wanted you to do while you're on earth. And I always say, once you've found that, find out what your reason for existing is, and you do it, and you accomplish it. I always tell them, it must be a wonderful feeling when it's time for you to change worlds, and you go down that path, and you recognize and realize you accomplished what those spirits wanted you to do while you're here on earth. To me, that is Anishinaabe success. So that's one of the important things that we need to take a look as a people to find out what it is we're supposed to do and do it. 23. Work hard at pursuing your education. Listen carefully to what you're being taught. If you do well in school, you're going to be able to support yourself. You're going to be in a much better position if you get those degrees and go on. High school grad, college grad, you're able to take care of yourself. These old people that raised me, when I was in high school, they had to be in their 60s and 70s at that time. And that old man would always tell me, he said, don't worry about your chores. I will take care of, getting the wood in the house. We heated by wood then. And getting the water, hauling the water. He said, what I want you to do is concentrate on your studies. And that's what they would do. They really encouraged me to get my education. They realized the importance of that, so they did everything possible they could to encourage me. And as a result, I was a good student. Okay, number 24. It's important for us to live by these teachings. What that means is it is these teachings that will carry us over those hurdles in life and help us in living our lives. And it's important to us to listen carefully and be able to pass these teachings on to our children so that they're always here. A lot of times some of us will say, I wish I would have listened more carefully when I was being taught all of these teachings. Listen carefully to one of those old people are teaching you anything. Number 25. This teaching here, I always believe, it's the reason that Mille Lacs has a lot of its ceremonies, language left in their communities. There was a teaching that I was brought up with and other people were brought up with, and we're always told, do not take the white man's way. Do not take his religion. And they said, if you're to take the white man's way of life, and when you pass on, you are not going to go to that place in the West where people go and they pass on. And that used to always scare me. I wanted to go where my close relatives have gone. So there was a strong push on Mille Lacs to do that. And as a result, a lot of our ceremonies survived. Our language survived. And a lot of our other communities didn't. A lot of them went on to assimilate, adopted Christianity, adopted a way of life that was not theirs. And that's the worst thing that could have happened to us as a people. It's only when we begin to embrace our identity, our language, and our teachings that we find peace within. Within us there is a spirit, and that spirit is in the Anishinaabe. It was put on this earth as an Anishinaabe. And in this lifetime you do everything to nurture that spirit. Learning the language, going to ceremonies, practicing all of these teachings of respect. And what that'll do is bring peace to your life. You will never be at peace if you adopt a different way of life. A way of life does not belong to you as an Anishinaabe. And I'm glad, I'm happy we had these teachings, or it would have been a total loss, because the missionaries were really out to convert us. Even in my upbringing, I can remember them coming, trying to get us to go to their church and even telling us outright to not practice our ways, that was evil, BS. They did everything they could possibly to manipulate us to convert to Christianity. And this is the teaching that I was told about. I was really strong in my upbringing, so as a result, I always continued and carried on our traditional ways. The next teaching, number 26, do not commit suicide. It's one of our teachings. Those old people told me, if you were to take your own life and commit suicide, you would not go to where our people go in the West. You would not complete that journey. You would get stuck along that path eating roots and never really go where people go over there in the West. And that used to really scare me. Even when I was using, I'd get suicidal, but this teaching wasn't so strong and so ingrained in me, I would not even consider it. I've done some funerals where Anishinaabe committed suicide. But in most of those cases, they had been on medication, depression medication. To me, depression is like an illness. And usually the suicide was a result of that illness. So a lot of them, those funerals I did, the families reported later that they had dreams of their relative reaching that place in the West, that they did make it. I would ask, those spirits, forgive these people, they did not do this intentionally because of that illness. So they were able to make it. Okay, number 27 on these teachings about respect relates to our winter legends. Those stories that we are told during the winter time. These are in no way similar to like the fairy tales or the other stories that are out there today. The old lady that raised me always told me to make sure you don't fall asleep. When I'm telling you these stories, try to stay awake. Because these characters, the ones that I'm speaking about and talking about in these stories are manidug, and they are spirits. If you listen carefully, they could gift you with something that will help you later on in your life. This is just another example that shows you how much respect Anishinaabe people had, even for their stories and the characters in their stories. It just was so much a part of our lives. I'd also mentioned, too, that the old lady, as soon as the first snow came down, I'd approach her with her tobacco to start telling me the stories, and she'd pretty much tell them every night until right around the 1st of January. And she would say, I'm going to retell these stories and send these spirits back to where they came from. So here again, she mentions how we are respectful to those stories. And I think my children hearing that, examples of respect, they can't help but practice that in their lives. So. Number 28, do not play on the ice at night. You could meet up with the the fireman, they called him. He was a being or a spirit maybe that just was encompassed with fire, and you could meet him out there on the ice. Then number 29, do not steal from people. You will not get ahead by stealing. You will eventually lose more than what you would have gained, or you think you have gained from stealing. So that's not the way to go about living your life, is to go about ripping off people. I'm sure, with the drug use in a lot of our communities, we hear about a lot of their break-ins. People breaking into their fellow Anishinaabe homes and running off with, TVs, electronic equipment, whatever they have in the house, and sell those for drugs. There's not going to be a payoff for these people. Their drug use is going to get even worse, and they're going to get in a worse predicament. So, number 30, do not be jealous or envious of your fellow Anishinaabe. You should be happy for our Anishinaabe whenever they receive something. Maybe they get a pay raise, a good job, or maybe they're able to buy a new car or a newer car. Just try to be happy for them. Be grateful that Anishinaabe are able to get ahead in their lives. They talk about that crabs in a basket syndrome, where a lot of oppressed communities, that seems to happen a lot. You have these crabs in a basket, and they get up to the top and are almost able to make it over, and they have one come along and pull them back down. A lot of times we have a tendency to want to do that in our community. Just be happy and be happy for our people who get ahead. 31, do not harm the rocks. These rocks have a spirit within them. They're known as our grandfathers. They're called Mishumasananaga. Those rocks have a spirit within them. For example, the concept of a sweat lodge is that the rocks that are brought in are heated up. They're called Mishumasug. They're brought in, placed in the center of that sweat lodge, and then they also have a pail of water that's brought in. And what they do during the course of that sweat lodge ceremony, someone pours the water over those rocks. And that steam that comes off of there is spiritual power. It's called life, Bimadizuin. And as that steam goes into your spirit, into your physical body, what it does, it pushes out anything that's negative or whatever may be bothering you. That's what Sweat Lodge is about. And usually you'll have people tell you that when they go into a sweat lodge, it seems like they have a lot of things that bother them, but when they're done and come out of that sweat lodge, it just seems like none of that. None of those things that are bothering them it's no longer an issue anymore. That's why they call it the womb of the Mother Earth. You come out fresh as a baby. And that's the power of those rocks, that they're able to do that with the help of the water. The other thing I see happen a lot is whenever you're along a lake shore, you'll see people come along, and what they'll do is they'll throw rocks into that body of water, that lake, and skip them along. That's something that should not be done. That's disrespectful to the spirit within those rocks. Number 32, do not be lazy or worthless. Our people were really hard workers. I don't know what happened in the generations in between, but those old people that raised me and a lot of my uncles and aunts, and during that time, they were people that would not sit still. They were always doing something, working on something. For example, she did beadwork. She would do these bandolier bags, which is a lot of beadwork, sew blankets. He would be always hunting, cutting wood, stacking up wood for the winter. He didn't like to sit still. And these are people that were really admired by Anishinaabe, ones that were hard workers. I was talking about when you were raised in that community, and they talked about what would be a good mate for you, or someone that would be good to marry. They always talked about those that were good workers. For example, the woman that was really a good cook, was really good at sewing blankets, was good at tanning hides, was good at harvesting wild rice, the one that brought in the most rice. It's all of those that were admired in the women in those days, and that a lot of the young men were encouraged to look toward those women as an ideal mate. And they never talked about their physical appearance. Should find a woman who's beautiful, pretty. They never talked about that, the physical beauties. So, if the woman or the guy was uglier than heck, but could really do some good work and knew how to work, that was the one to pick as your mate, someone to live with. So probably you could end up with a two-bagger. Want someone so ugly you had to put a couple bags on them over their head. But that's what they are. My point of my story is saying all this is that that's what they really respected, is someone who worked really hard. This seems like I may have covered this earlier, but I'll talk about a couple other things about that shows how, what a strong work ethic our people had. The old lady that raised me always talked about, at one point in her life, she used to smoke cigarettes. Imagine she rolled them or whatever. And she said, I didn't like that, taking time off of my work. I had to sit down and smoke and interrupt my work. And then she said, I found out. I found snuff. If I chewed, I don't have to take a break. I could just work straight through what I was doing. And she said that's why I took up snuff chewing. So that shows you how hard they wanted to work. There were few other stories, so I know one of them they used to laugh about. If you knew the language, you'd appreciate this one more, but they talked about how it seemed like when they got really busy, that's when they had to go to the bathroom. They didn't like that. That's how ambitious and what hard workers they were then. Now, number 34, I just covered number 33. Number 34, they always encouraged me to learn how to cook. If I learned how to do my cooking, I wouldn't have to rely on anybody to cook for me in the future. And being single, I sure appreciate that teaching. I don't really have to rely on anybody to cook for me. 35. If you have trouble making a fire or just don't know how to make a fire, you're going to grow up having a lazy wife. That's probably been true. 36. If you put your shoes on wrong, you're going to run into your doodim or the animal from your clan as you go down that road. I haven't tried that one out yet, but probably true. If you button your shirt up wrong, they used to say, it's because you have someone on your mind, someone you have in mind that you want to date or you want to be involved with, and that's what's occupying your mind, and that's why you don't button your shirt right. 38, they always warned me, don't go far away from the house in the wintertime. Stay close to the house. A storm or wind can come along at any time, and you would not be able to see your way back, and you'd be lost out there. That's one of the teachings they gave me. 39, do not touch or handle those things that do not belong to you, especially when you're out visiting. Especially sacred items. When I travel out and about, sometimes I'll have my pipe sitting on the floor next to me. Maybe a fan. I was told I would always make sure to keep kids away from them, make sure they don't handle those. Especially women. I'm sure I'll be covering this at some point as I talk about these ceremonies. Women at some certain points in our lives are really, in particular, powerful. especially when a young girl is turning into a woman. If she come back to buy your sacred items, she could nullify them. That's how powerful a woman is at that time. So, anytime we have ceremonies, I always make sure to tell women to hold their skirts and their dresses and close to them whenever they get near any of our sacred items. That's the power of them. And basically, we're also told not to handle anything, especially when we go to visit somewhere. One of the things that those old people reminded me is that when they thought that I might violate that or I'd violate that teaching, they would tell me, no, what's going to happen? Well, what happened to you is if somebody had their genitals, private parts over there on the table, you would go over there and pull at them and try to figure out what that is. It always reminded me about that. Keep your hands off, keep your hands to yourself. And in particular, number 40, do not bother or touch sacred items that belong to someone else. Number 41, do not ask questions during the course of the ceremony. In time, you'll know what the Anishinaabe is doing as he puts tobacco. That's something a white man would do, come along with a lot of questions. I had mentioned that today. Talked about sometimes when I'm doing a funeral, I'll see a non-Indian, a Chumukaman, approaching, and I can just tell by their eyes they're about ready to come hit me with 10 million questions. And about that time, I'll say, all you need to know is it works, and that'll shut them off, because usually it's while I'm in the middle of the ceremony, too, that they want to ask all these different things. Not the time to do it. And number 42, the last one, do not talk too much or be mouthy. I always remember growing up and in those shacks, those homes we lived in those days, you could hear through the walls really good. And I always remember those old people, they would have people that stopped by to visit them. And I knew that they had high regard for these people, their visitors, had a lot of respect for them. And when these people would come in, initially there would be conversation. They would be talking, but after a while it would be quiet. There would be no talking in the other room. After these people would leave, I'd ask them, why didn't you talk to these people more? I knew you were excited about seeing them. Their only comment was, you don't have to. It's that Anishinaabe is not, a lot of our old Anishinaabe were comfortable with silence. But it's in this white world that a lot of people are not comfortable with the silence. If we go to a restaurant where there are white people, Chumukaman, my goodness, they sound like a whole bunch of blackbirds all chattering at once. And if you go anywhere where Anishinaabe is eating, You would have silence. You wouldn't hear all of that. This other society, we're taught to get into dinner conversation. Sometimes a lot of those non-Indians will greet each other and say a lot of meaningless things just to have something to say, because they're awkward with that silence. It's something that we as Anishinaabe were taught not to do. And sometimes when I see some of our people do that, I find them really strange. It's not the way we were raised, and you can tell that probably they were raised out there in those other communities rather than the Anishinaabe community. So that covers our teachings of respect. But all I can add on these is that these are terribly important. It's important we bring those back to our community. It's important. A lot of these will tell you what we're like as Anishinaabe. For example, if you're going to work in the Indian community, Anishinaabe community, and you're non-Indian, you're a Chimook, white man, white person, try to tone it down. If you're a Gabi person, come into an Indian household, an Anishinaabe household, remember, that's not the way we live our lives. So you can alienate some of our people. We got to be careful of your approach. It's just not something they do. And then the other thing I always talk about is if white people want to work in our community, I always tell them, when you come into our community, come in with the idea of learning from our people, not coming in to teach us and flood us with all kinds of stuff. That's what we've gone through our lifetime, is having stuff shoved down our throats that's not necessarily ours. So come in with the idea of learning from a community. We have a lot of beautiful ceremony, beautiful teachings that have been passed down to us, and for you to just acknowledge them and respect those. And not either, I'm not encouraging people to, convert to our Anishinaabe ways. We don't do that. As a German, as an Italian, as a French, whatever nationality you are, your spirit is French or German, whatever nationality you are. You have a set of teachings you were given. Those are the ones you'll practice. If you try to get away from being German, Italian, all of it has a brilliant idea that you're going to be an Anishinaabe, it's not going to work. You're abandoning your identity. That's what happened to us as a people. We had a society that came in and told us to abandon our teachings, and a lot of our people fell for it. And that's why we have the chaos. The craziness out there in our communities. Once our people come back to our original teachings and our way, that's when they'll find peace and bring peace to our communities. I just hope people won't downplay the importance of these teachings. I tell you, we need them. they need to be brought back into our communities. Thank you for listening to this part.